Hey, thanks for joining me today. In this video, I'm going to teach you everything you need to know about customizing van slip-ons like a pro. To display this process, I will be doing a commission custom pair for a customer in Korea as an example, but you can use this methodology for absolutely any style of art you would like to do. I'm going to walk you through the materials you're going to need, how to prepare the surface, as well as how to apply the paint and make sure that it stays. Alright, let's get into it. Okay, so first things first, in terms of materials, there are a couple of things that you would like to get ready. First of all, you're going to need your plain white canvas slip-on shoes. In this case, I've got the Vans Classic slip-ons. Next, you're going to need a plain paint palette or a saucer or small plate that you can use to apply your paint. Next, you're going to need a couple of different sizes of paintbrush. Typically, you only really need about 2 or 3 different variants of paintbrush. You need a fat or flat one that you can use for big surface areas. You need a small detailed one that you could use for small details. And then you want something sort of in the middle. Then in terms of actual painting materials, my go-to is Angelus brand leather paint. This is the absolute go-to for any sneaker customization, and you can use it for both canvas and leather shoes. However, if you use acrylic paint on something flexible like a canvas shoe, there is the risk that it is going to crack with time. To avoid this, we are going to add a paint additive to our acrylic paint to make sure that it is as flexible as the canvas beneath it and therefore won't crack. To do this, you can either use the Angelus product Too Soft, which you mix at a 50-50 ratio with your paint. Or if you want a more economical option, you can use GAC 900, which is literally the same thing at a fraction of the cost. For both of these, you add them to your paint at a ratio of 50-50. That means if you use 1 ml of paint, you're going to use 1 ml of additive. You will also need a hairdryer or a heat gun. Most people don't have heat guns, but pretty much everybody has a hairdryer lying around. You will also need some medium thickness paper masking tape. You should be able to get this at your local hardware or art store really cheaply. Now, let me just pause here and just say that one incredibly understated part of doing a good pair of customs is having a good mock-up design or idea. It doesn't have to be something that is polished or professional or even as detailed as something like this, but you do need to have a good idea of how you are going to use the space. So for the purposes of demonstration, I will be customizing a pair of BTS themed shoes. If you don't know who BTS are, they are a Korean boy band who has a cult-like following. So for the rest of this customization, I will be referring back to this design to make sure that I'm on track. Alright, let's get into it. The very first thing you're going to need to do is get some paper masking tape and tape off the rubber areas of the shoe so that no paint gets onto the rubber. In this pair, you can see that I am covering up the white trimming around the front of the shoe. I want this to remain completely white, and at the end of the painting process, I'll remove this and it should be as clear as it is now. To make sure that we're doing a really good base coat that is going to allow us to do much better, cleaner details later on, you're going to want to follow this very carefully. One of the most common questions I get asked about canvas sneakers is, do I need to add the additive to every single layer of paint? And I'm happy to say that if you follow the process I'm about to show you, the answer is no. All you need is a really well prepared surface coat. Then, every successive layer you can just use ordinary paint, and by doing it this way, you end up with a much cleaner, smoother, higher detailed finish. First, using a shot glass or a small cup or something similar, you want to pour in your white paint, just plain white paint. Regardless of what color theme you're going for, I highly recommend starting with just plain white paint. Next, you'll add in your Angelus Too Soft or GAC 900 to make up this 50-50 ratio. Next, using a medium or large brush, you're going to apply large amounts of this solution to your shoe. Notice how thick and wet I am making the surface. This is really important because the paint saturating the canvas is what's going to make our base coat so effective. The first couple of times I did this, I skimped a little bit in order to save paint, and it caused me all sorts of headaches later on. I started applying details and it gave me this sackcloth, screen printy kind of look. There's no need to rush. Because of the additive, it's not going to dry naturally anytime soon. So take your time and make sure that you are covering the entire area you're going to paint with your GAC or Too Soft and white paint mixture. Once you're completely sure that you have completely saturated and covered the area that you're going to be painting, next step is to heat set the base coat. Without heat setting, you'll notice that it takes an incredibly long time for this additive paint to dry. The additive GAC that we have added to our paint requires heat setting in order to dry. Using a hairdryer on a medium heat, you're going to want to go over your base coat several times until it is dry to the touch. If you skip this step, your paint will remain wet and it will be difficult for you to paint with any precision because your colors will just bleed together. Just be careful not to hold the hairdryer in one place for too long or too close, because you can actually burn the paint if you are not careful. The next step is adding a base coat. You can do this just with a paintbrush and solid paint with no GAC or Too Soft added if you want. For the commission that I'm currently working on, I need a specific fade effect, so I'm going to use an airbrush to lay down a base coat of color. Something that really takes good customs and makes them excellent is doing your edges. That requires taking a small brush and just making sure that you are carefully neatening up your work as you go. Now, from this point onwards, you can paint anything you want on the surface of this shoe and it won't crack. Now, obviously I can't show you every variation of how to do this, but basically, when it comes to using Angelus Paint on shoes, I highly recommend going by this general loose rule. If your base or lower color is dark, you're going to need to put a white or light gray coat down before you paint on top of it. While the paint is quite opaque, without priming it with a white or gray coat, if you try to put red or yellow or any of the lighter colors on top of a dark color, it's not going to look so great. However, if your base color coat is something light and bright, you can often paint the darker colors on top, no problem. As you'll see in my little mock-up here, I now need to paint grays and all sorts of lighter tones on top of this dark gradient that I've made. And again, you can do all of this just with a brush, but just because I'm going for a certain level of precision, I'm going to make a little homemade stencil mask and use the airbrush to get a nice light gray coat as my base. I actually have an entire video that teaches you how to make these stencils for free at home. All you need is a screen and a pen and you can do it. I'll make sure to link that at the end of this video so you can check it out. Usually with acrylic paint, it takes a couple of layers to get that nice opaque finish, and if you want to add any depth, it might require a couple of different passes. Before showing you the next step, let me just fill in these details. Alright, next, the best part, the most enjoyable part of customizing sneakers is removing the masking tape that has been protecting your whites. It's not always as easy as they make it look on TikTok, but it's exceptionally satisfying. And it's a great way to admire your work. The next and final step in customizing your Vans is choosing and using a clear coat finisher to protect your work long term. I also highly recommend the Angelus Clear Coat range. They've got a whole bunch of really good options to choose from. The options range from high gloss, medium gloss, Angelus Matte, which is actually pretty glossy, is what I used for this pair here. And then more on the matte side, you've got Satin and Angelus Flat 4. Angelus Flat 4 is my go-to for most custom sneaker projects. It makes the paint look incredibly opaque and flat. The only downside, however, is that it sometimes neutralizes the depth of your blacks. What this means is that if you have any true or dark black, it can make it look a little bit pastely or chalky. So because of this, I went with Angelus Clear Coat Matte, which, as I said, is not really that matte. It does have a bit of a gloss to it. But because of the theme I was going for with these darker colors and that sort of starry, shiny glow, I definitely thought that I could use a little bit of reflection. And I think that these came out pretty nice. Just a tip on caring for your customs once you've done them. Many people want to know, can I clean them? How do I care for them? Well, if you followed the process in this video, your art is already going to be incredibly durable. It should last for a good couple of years of normal use. That said, you still want to avoid playing football in them or kicking stones or cans down the road. If you do want to clean your shoes, I highly recommend a soft bristled brush or a wet sponge. Stay away from any detergents, just using warm water, and the brush should be more than sufficient. And this kind of goes without saying, but don't put them in the washing machine. And that's a wrap. That is how you customize Vans slip-on sneakers and make sure that your art lasts for a really long time. If you've got any questions, helpful comments, or a different way that you have done this before, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you want to learn more about customizing things and bringing art to everyday objects, then please subscribe and join us on this journey.